Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, July 24th, 2025, 7/24/25 on whatever device you may be listening to me on and in your journal. The 205th day of the year, 5 months from today, is Christmas Eve. And just think about how fast the last 5 months went by. It's also National Tequila Day, so do as you will, but do it responsibly. In the headlines,
no denying that the Russians interfered in the election.
Right.
Russiagate, Obamagate, it's blowing up. And Jeffrey Epstein's former companion and partner in sex crimes, Ghislaine Maxwell, has agreed to meet with the Justice Department at her prison in Tallahassee, Florida today. Well, the prison that she's been locked up in, not her prison. According to the DOJ, she will be discussing potential accomplices in Epstein's sex ring with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, and is also now being subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee. This could, and I emphasize could, be the beginning of us getting somewhere. Her attorney is indicating that she will testify to the House Oversight Committee as well. Some news outlets making a big deal about the fact that President Trump is being told by the DOJ that he is in the Epstein files. No kidding. We have all seen the photos of him and Epstein at the Mar-a-Lago party. We knew that Trump was on Epstein's plane at least one time when he flew from Florida to New York with one of his sons. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi had to cancel an appearance at an anti-human trafficking summit in D.C. yesterday for medical reasons. Turns out she's recovering from an eye injury, and yes, it would be difficult to read the teleprompter or notes with an eye injury. But the big news came from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in yesterday's White House press briefing, as we discussed at the end of yesterday's Newsmax Daily. Lidia breaks it all down.
A treasonous coup, sedition, conspiracy, subverting the will of the American people. Those are just some of the words used by Department of National Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard to describe the alleged actions of Barack Obama, intelligence officials, and Hillary Clinton, to name a few, after declassifying more documents today regarding the plot to destroy Donald Trump with a Russia hoax. And today, Gabbard dropped a political bomb in the White House press briefing room.
There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people.
Unbelievable. Gabbard posting that new 46-page document to X today, in which she says further shows that the Obama administration manufactured that 2017 intelligence assessment report, which promoted the huge lie that Putin helped Trump win the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton. Now, the Department of Justice has also now officially received a referral for criminal charges, who will then ultimately decide who gets charged and for what. And it also revealed that no one is above the law, not even a president.
Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment.
Gabbard says more evidence of a conspiracy is forthcoming and that whistleblowers are also coming forward. Gabbard told Newsmax's Rob Schmidt last night that evidence shows it was none other, you just heard her there, that Barack Obama, who carefully masterminded this entire hoax.
The summary of conclusions that came from that meeting, which happens after every principals committee meeting that now in President Trump's cabinet we participate in, that summary of conclusions then provides the documented evidence of how President Obama ordered tasks through then DNI Clapper to the intelligence community to create an intelligence community assessment that details how Moscow tried to meddle in the U.S. election to influence the outcome in favor of President Trump. So the distinction there is very clear from the intelligence community's assessments prior to the election, just after the election, and then what happened and the document that was drafted and published in January of 2017 under the direct instruction, the direction of President Obama at that time.
Gabbard says veteran intel officials even warned Obama and former CIA Director John Brennan that the intel regarding Trump, that he was colluding with the Russians, was fake. But the 2017 intel assessment, it was created anyway. Yet here we are, years later, and only now we're finding out the truth. It's coming out. So why did it take so long? Well, the answer is simple. The media. Even today, CNN blatantly censoring Gabbard at today's briefing.
Multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th,
we've been listening there to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, continuing on what has now been a multi-day effort, not only with public statements like this, but release of documents to attempt to back up the quite extreme allegation that President Obama is guilty of treason.
Attempts, quite extreme. You know, many media outlets, they became the right-arm activist propaganda machine for the Democrat Party. According to the Media Research Center, from 2017 to 2019, ABC, CBS, and NBC dedicated over 2,000 minutes of evening news coverage on the Trump-Russia collusion story, basically saying he was guilty. And reminder, that's not including the cable news outlets, which clearly had just one angle to the story. And it was like on a loop, non-stop.
Russia hacking the election to elect Trump is the end of our democracy. Votes were definitely affected. Russia hacked the election to tilt it to Mr. Trump.
Russia did interfere with our election.
The Russians definitively hacked the election.
If you can get them to accept that Russia hacked the election, see if you can get them to accept who won the Civil War.
Well, Russia has definitely been interfering with the election.
I think that there's pretty much agreement on all sides that Russia definitely tried to influence the election in some way.
Yet when it came to the Biden auto pen scandal, ABC, CBS, PBS, they didn't even cover it at all. And NBC spent a scant 34 seconds on it.
That's Newsmax host Lidia who is filling in for the vacationing Carl Higbee this week. If you're wondering why I haven't had any Higbee highlights for the past few days, Carl has been on a well-deserved vacation. Let's go to Finnerty, 8 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax, who really dialed it in on former President Barack Obama.
Forget about what everyone has said. Forget about what the lawyers have said, the experts, the pundits. Forget about all of it. Why didn't Barack Obama say anything? Why? No one can answer that very simple question. If Barack Obama knew that Donald Trump didn't in any way collude with Russia to win the 2016 election, why didn't he say anything? Why? Why not? And why can't anyone, even his own supporters at CNN, answer that simple question? Could the answer possibly be that they didn't want Donald Trump to get away with it? They wanted people to think that he colluded with the Russians. And Barack Obama knew that all along.
Multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts.
That was DNI Tulsi Gabbard today. After the election, Barack was still president for almost 3 months, but he never said anything about Donald Trump being innocent. Instead, he did the opposite. In a very slick beer summit, you can keep your doctor very Obama way, he subtly pushed the lie. And while Barack set all that in motion behind the scenes, publicly he never let on. He was just as slick and smooth as always. He was even there to help Donald Trump. Remember that?
Some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
And sabotage the incoming president. Did I add that? It took Barack just 1 day to put out this statement on Monday claiming none of these accusations were true, but he never did that for Donald Trump over the course of 3 months or even after he left office. He never put out a statement stating unequivocally that Donald Trump never colluded with Russia. But yesterday, he put out a statement professing his innocence, saying, quote, "These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Nothing in the documents issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election, but did not successfully manipulate the votes." Well, isn't that just stupendous, Barack Obama? But if that's true, why didn't you say anything like that at the time? Why didn't you set the record straight on December 9th, a month after the election, when the New York Times reported that Russian hackers acted to aid Trump in the election? On the same day, the Washington Post, by some miraculous coincidence of happenstance, had the exact same story. This is why they won Pulitzer Prizes, by the way. Secret CIA assessment says Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House. Why didn't you say anything then, Barack? And why did you say this 1 week later on December 16th?
If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them, too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him?
Barack Obama never set the record straight on purpose, which we believe to be an act of pure evil. A sitting president working to sabotage an incoming president. That is evil. And we say that because the day before the story broke in the New York Times and the Washington Post, on December 8th, the day before, President Obama's daily brief that a president gets every day contained a document that stated this, quote, "We assess that Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure." Why didn't Barack Obama put the brief down, run, sprint into the briefing room right then, that day, and set the record straight? There is too much on the line, but Barack wanted to play politics. Why didn't Barack say anything? Because that's not the story that Barack wanted to tell.
That is Rob Finnerty, host of Finnerty. And of course, the story they wanted to tell is the one that we all got and were forced to listen to, right? Russia, Russia, Russia.
The truth tonight is that Barack Obama has been implicated in a crime that is bigger than the fake crime ever was. Barack Obama is the real Russian asset. He weaponized Russia against an American president, and now he's scared. And he should be. He's probably sitting in his living room right now at his $12 million Martha's Vineyard mansion. Barack Obama is scared, probably for the first time in his life. He was president of the United States, meaning everyone worked for him. John Brennan, James Clapper, John Kerry, Andrew McCabe, James Comey, Joe Biden. If Barack Obama wanted something done when he was president, it got done. And we don't say any of this because we don't like Barack Obama. We don't. We say it because it's the truth. Barack was in charge. In 2016, Democrats accused Donald Trump of colluding with our enemy, with Russia, to win the election, which never made a whole lot of sense to me. You're telling me that Donald Trump, the billionaire businessman best known for hosting The Apprentice and the Miss America pageant, somehow convinced Vladimir Putin in Russia to help him win the White House 10 years ago, and then Vladimir Putin played along, and people across America bought this hook, line, and sinker? Has anyone ever thought to ask why Vladimir Putin would want Trump over Hillary? Wouldn't he want Hillary, the known entity at the time, not the guy that nobody knows anything about? Again, think about what they did to Donald Trump. A year ago today, he was in a courtroom in New York City. 4 indictments. 90 felony charges. They tried to bankrupt him. They raided his home. They took his mugshot. They tried to put him in jail. They wish he was in jail, but he's not, because something happened in November that Barack Obama never expected. Donald Trump won the election. And now, the new director of national intelligence, a former Democrat herself, by the way, is going to make sure the world meets the real Barack Obama for the first time.
Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment.
Again, that is our Director of National Intelligence, a member of the Army Reserve, former member of the Hawaii National Guard who served in Iraq and Kuwait in yesterday's intense White House press briefing. For any possible legal ramifications and what you really want to know, we go to the experts on the Chris Salcedo Show.
Did Barack Obama and his communist cabal break laws in their pursuit of unchallenged power? That's the question before Chris's court today. Here to present their cases, former chief counsel for the Senate Intelligence Committee, former senior Justice Department official and Newsmax contributor Victoria Tunsing, and former chief counsel for the Senate Rules Committee, former U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. and Newsmax contributor Joe DiGenova, along with civil rights attorney Robert Patillo. Counselors, welcome to you all. As a historical footnote, folks, this is the first Chris's Court of Public Opinion actually features actual attorneys as advocates. So let's begin to argue the question before the court. Did Obama and his regime break laws as it pertains to the Russia election collusion hoax? First, both sides have 1 minute for your opening statements. The clock is strictly enforced by our producers. Victoria and Joe, you go first.
There's no doubt, based on the disclosures by Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, that beginning in 2016 and through 2017 and up until today, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, James Brennan, James Comey, John Brennan, James Comey, and others led a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his civil rights. They conspired to do so by spreading false information into interstate commerce. They fed it to the media. They fed it to the American people. They used it in official proceedings. And ultimately, that led to charges being brought to him by state authorities as well, based on false information. They violated his civil rights, and there should be a federal grand jury to investigate it thoroughly.
Robert, your opening statement, sir.
Well, I think it's very clear. President Trump was in office for 4 full years. We had 4 full years of a Biden term, and now we are now into the second Trump term. And suddenly, as soon as President Trump has questions about the Epstein files, oh my God, we've discovered this massive issue that we did not discover in the first 4 years that we were in office. It's clear what is going on here. President Trump is grasping at any string possible to try to deflect and distract from the fact that he lied to his MAGA base, and now they are demanding answers. Every effort has been made to distract from the fact that the American people are demanding answers to this Epstein issue, and no matter how far back in time you can go, this is almost a decade-old information that suddenly comes out just because President Trump is in trouble, and the American people see directly through it.
Civil rights attorney Robert Patillo, who says it's a big distraction campaign by the Trump administration, which is exactly what all the Democrats who perpetrated Obama's story are saying as well, right? Let's fast forward to the closing arguments.
And the court must remind the jury that there has been a criminal referral sent by the Director of National Intelligence to the Department of Justice in this matter. That's something that the jury has to know. Okay, now it's time for closing statements. 1 minute each. Victoria and Joe, counselors, you go first.
There is no doubt, based on all the available evidence, both on the public record and just recently released by the Director of National Intelligence, that beginning in 2016, a group of people, including Barack Obama, Joe Biden, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, Lisa Monaco, Hillary Clinton, conspired to deny Donald Trump his civil rights and conspired to interfere in the upcoming election in 2020 and did everything they could to undermine Donald Trump's lawful authority as president of the United States so that he would not be able to faithfully execute the laws which he was sworn to uphold. That interference in the constitutional process was the crime of denying Donald Trump his civil rights. It is a conspiracy under the civil rights law. And as a result, there is no doubt that that was in fact established by all the available public evidence.
Robert, and your 1 minute closing statement, sir. Go ahead.
Thanks. How can be an expert in civil rights law and cannot find a single civil rights law which is even alleged to have been violated? This is what we like to call a nothing burger. This is another ridiculous thing that they throw out there to distract from, as we said, the fact that it was announced today President Trump was informed by the Department of Justice he is involved in the Epstein list. His name is featured on that list. And the American people are demanding answers. You can throw out as many distractions as you want. You can have all the chaff, all the flares. But at the end of the day, the American people want the real information, and they'll have it.
Joe DiGenova, Victoria Tunsing, and Robert Patillo, thank you very much. We appreciate your participation in today's court. Folks, time for you, the jury, to deliberate. Are Barack Obama and several members of his administration guilty of a crime?
Chris Salcedo, your liberty-loving Latino, host of the Chris Salcedo Show. In the previous segment, Finnerty mentioned members of the press being recognized for their incorrect propagandist reporting. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt roasted those people in the press briefing that was carried in its entirety on Newsmax yesterday, where you get all of the briefings, all of the news. Newsmax, maximum news.
This is truly one of the greatest political scandals in American history. And reporters at legacy outlets, some of which are sitting in this room today, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, were ridiculously awarded Pulitzer Prizes for their perpetuation of this hoax. It's well past time for those awards to be stripped from the journalists who receive them. It is not journalism to propagate political disinformation in service of the Democrat Party and those in the intelligence community who hand over out of context and fake intelligence to push a false political narrative.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, who also announced in the press briefing that President Trump will be going to Scotland tomorrow for a meeting with UK Prime Minister Starmer on the previous trade agreement. She didn't say this, but his 3-day visit to Scotland will also include stops at his 2 golf clubs there, which some people are going to be unhappy with, obviously. Today, the president is visiting the Federal Reserve as tensions run high between him and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. This could get interesting. Trump has consistently said that he would not fire Powell, but he has consistently grown more unhappy with him.
People aren't able to buy a house because this guy is a numbskull. He keeps the rates too high and probably doing it for political reasons.
This could be something. This will be later in the afternoon, so watch for that. The White House also said the federal government is looking for alternatives to SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, in developing the president's Golden Dome air defense system. The White House and Pentagon says this was already in discussion before Trump and Elon had their falling out, that they simply don't want to be reliant on a single partner. There is an article about this on Newsmax.com, by the way, but I will tell you that the Golden Dome project and the $175 billion allocated for it in the One Big Beautiful Bill is the one big beautiful thing that people aren't talking much about. This is huge. SpaceX or not, the Golden Dome is going to bring big money and lots of jobs to places like the Oklahoma Air and Spaceport, Florida's Space Coast in my backyard, Techport, San Antonio maybe, military bases around the country. This is huge, no pun intended. And in Texas, it's been 20 days since the floodwaters swept through central Texas. Another body was found in the debris yesterday, bringing the death toll to 135 people, with several people still unaccounted for. Wednesday, state lawmakers heard the first debriefings on the response to the flood, including testimony from the Texas Department of Emergency Management chief, who said the systems need major updating and they need to do a better job.
We've got to do a better job at our warning and notification systems.
A listener who goes by the handle of JoJock9240 appreciated me noting the death of Ozzy Osbourne and his musical success on yesterday's Daily, but he wanted me to talk about his amazing marriage to Sharon and how he overcame his alcohol and drug addictions, which are all worthy of conversation, but I only have so much time, bro, and I do appreciate you listening. What I did want to mention yesterday, and I just completely forgot, was the final concert with Black Sabbath a few weeks ago. It was a televised fundraising event, which raised $190 million to help cure Parkinson's disease, which Ozzy had, and for children's hospitals. What a way to go out, if you think about that, right? Imagine if the last thing you did on earth before passing was raise $190 million for charity. On Wall Street, stocks opened mixed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 300 points, mainly off of earnings news. Marquee earnings just continuing to pour in. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ were slightly higher. Be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax N2 and at Newsmax.com. And again, keep an eye on the markets this afternoon, because if Trump does all of a sudden fire Powell, things could get crazy. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon, Greta Van Susteren at 6, Rob Schmidt tonight, Ed Henry with the briefing, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, Friday Eve, right? Maybe knock back a couple of tequilas and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.